So, fratres and sorors, let us begin with an invocation. So, close your eyes and breathe deeply. Let us turn our minds to a summer solstice invocation. This is from a little book called the Essene Book of Meditations and Blessings. With the electric limits of my aura, my personal energy field, I tap the power of the earth in summer. The earth current flows. It flows in me and strengthens my body for the work that only I can do as a channel for the light. I feel it shine in me. And from the book, the first book of the Pomandres, written by Hermes Trismegistus, receive pure offerings of speech offered to you by inner mind and heart. Thou who art unutterable, vast, beyond description, who art spoken of by silence. I beg you that I may not fall from the knowledge that leads toward your essence, and endow me with vitality. By this grace, I go to life and light. You are blessed. So mote it be. So, my dears, let us go to a screen share, and I will show you my slides. So everyone can see that, okay? I hope the technology listens to my commands here. Now, my internet, being where I am in a remote corner of the world, is occasionally unstable. So if the screen freezes, don't panic. These slides have written out most of what I want to say, so just follow along and read. Or if there's a kind of a freeze or a blank moment, just meditate. And I will ask Essay not to panic either and not to switch to her slideshow that I sent her, but I'll just keep on going and hopefully not drone on too long. So I do want to speak to your conscious mind and not just to your subconscious, your unconscious. So I would ask you to try to stay awake and listen, because there's much to share here. All right, let us begin. In Latin, earth and humanity are as one. Today is a celebration of this interconnectedness or important union of light, life, and love. We have a certain place in nature, in the cosmos. The Earth is the third planet from the sun. And if you look at this image, how beautiful it is. It's not to scale. We're not that close to Jupiter, thank goodness, because we would be sucked into its gravity and likely obliterated by the sun. But we are in the sweet spot in our solar system. We can see how fragile and beautiful the Earth is relative to the other planets in our solar system. At present, they cannot support human life on their own. So our awareness must shift to protecting the Earth as a living biosphere. So the question I want you to ask yourselves is, what is your place in the grand scheme of things? I said to you, I feel like a little nobody sometimes, but I am, in fact, a microscopic reflection of the macrocosm. This is the cosmos, nature itself, all of the physical created universe or multiverse, if you will. How is the cosmic in our teachings a different concept? This is probably one of the best definitions of the cosmic that we've recently received. And it's a quotation from the Rosicrucian Utopia that was the subject of a teleconference just within the last week or so. This is from our new imperator, Claudio Mizuko. The divine projected itself as love, with the aim to know its own creation. Of this projection, we know, or more precisely, we perceive the intelligence that permeates the entire universe and every form of nature. Rosicrucians call it the cosmic. The intelligence that permeates the entire universe. We had a beautiful, beautiful presentation by both Frater Shaluli and also Julian Johnson about the intelligence of plants. And here we mean intelligence in terms of order, universal laws that govern the universe. This is a Hubble Deep Field image. It's a galaxy cluster. We are looking further and further into the origins of the universe. And that spiraling effect is actually a gravitational effect. It's called gravitational lensing. So we see countless galaxies, other whole mini universes where other life no doubt exists. Now this particular image, and it's helpful, I'm hoping you're seeing the whole screen. This is an expression, the fracturing of the light that comes from Tolkien, and Frater Stephen Armstrong wrote about this. This is another NASA image that shows us cosmic epochs, beginning with the Big Bang. And that little, what looks like a satellite, is actually the Hubble Space Telescope looking further back in time. There are many creation theories and stories that exist. Some are scientific, some are poetic, others are deeply spiritual. The Big Bang is a theory, not a fact. Even Stephen Hawking would admit to that. Very similar to this theory is the spiritual creation story in Hebraic mysticism. Everything began from a single point, a cosmic singularity that expanded, and although perfect in itself, manifested something more than itself. Yet each particle that came into being also contained the essence of the one. In Kabbalistic mysticism, as in alchemy, this original point and its progenitor are veiled. So Tolkien's creation myth, many of you know, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, have seen it actually as a film, if you haven't read it. But posthumously, after his transition, the Silmarillion was published, something that he had worked on for a long time, where he envisions a kind of creation allegory. And he talks about the fracturing of the light by Iluvatar, the One. Modern astronomers scoff at the Ptolemaic representation of the cosmos with Earth at its center. How could they get that wrong? Surrounded by rotating spheres. But they forget that this model is meant to be philosophical and not physical. When you were a child and went outside and looked at the sky and the heavens and the sun, it seems quite obvious to us, and many also civilizations in their infancy, that in fact an Earth-centered universe makes sense. But if you think about it, you too are the center of your own universe or cosmos. As in Kabbalistic and Hermetic thought, such models represent spheres of divine influence on the physical world. We now know that there is a vast cosmic scale which extends from the deepest vibration in the earth to the highest in the universe to encompass audible sound, radio, and thought waves. Because we as living beings participate in this vast cosmic scale of vibrations, we can attune in consciousness with the highest creative energies of divinity, spoken as the first word, called logos in Greek. According to Hermetic tradition, it was Hermes Trismegistus, meaning 3 times great, who was a combination of the Egyptian god Thoth and the Greek Hermes. Hermes Trismegistus articulated the great principle or law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. Hebraic mysticism and Kabbalah also describe a first cause and the metaphysical aspects of being and our cosmic connection. Likewise, transcendental alchemy is about discovering the divine essence in all things while transmuting the outer self to better align with this essence, or hidden stone. These teachings are examples of what we call the primordial tradition. So next question, what is the primordial tradition? This phrase refers to the knowledge common across all civilizations that comes from the cosmic mind, transmitted to humans via symbols, mystical insights, and cosmic illumination. It is evident in Paleolithic cultures, indigenous traditions, Asian and Eastern mysticism, and all religions at their highest levels. Rosicrucianism is a pure form of the primordial tradition. The book that you see pictured here, the Pomandries, the Pomander, of which I read to you a brief little quotation, was originally written in Greek, and it refers to the knowledge of Re. In other words, according to the Egyptians, the sun, the one, and describes the divine emanation or logos as it descends into matter. Really, this first book of the Hermetic writings is about reintegration and the return to the one. The concept of a primordial tradition first appeared in the Renaissance or Renaissance, especially after the rediscovery of this body of work, the Corpus Hermeticum, in 1460. Here you see a kind of representation of the Ptolemaic universe and those celestial spheres. Here's a saying attributed to Pythagoras. There is a geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Although no actual writings of Pythagoras survive, we know from historians and his followers that he postulated a musica universalis, a music or harmony of the spheres. The Pythagoreans pictured a series of concentric spheres in which each of the 7 moving objects, the planets, the sun, the moon, the stars, all moved independently from each other, with Earth at the center. The friction between these crystalline spheres gave rise to harmonious sounds, the music of the spheres. Only the most gifted could hear these celestial sounds. They were considered to be beyond the range of human hearing, so high in vibration, so as to constitute cosmic silence. Pythagoras claimed to have been taught to hear this music by Thoth Hermes. And Pythagoras was an Ionian, and the Ionians had a school of learning in both Greece and in Asia Minor. This is a painting by a Russian artist, Fyodor Bronnikov, from 1869. The Pythagoreans celebrate sunrise. This artist loved Italian culture and art. He moved from Russia to Italy and studied art there. Here the Pythagoreans are celebrating the sunrise using stringed instruments with music. The circled dot was used by the Pythagoreans to represent the first metaphysical being, the monad or the absolute. In Rosicrucian ontology, the cosmic is the monad, meaning the one or the absolute. This concept of God or the cosmic consciousness is simply understood as containing within itself all being. The image of the circle, especially with the dot, is a primordial symbol. And some of you know that it's also the Egyptian hieroglyph for the sun. Being refers to all of nature, the cosmos, as well as all metaphysical levels. That means energies and consciousness beyond the physical. As Frater Shaluli spoke to us, and also Julian mentioned, the dualities of nature, plants fighting threats, and of course, some of the perceived collisions and great forces clashing in nature, the things around us that we're experiencing now, COVID-19, global pandemic, climate change. We understand that there are great forces in nature of seeming opposites. They often come into conflict or collision in the material or manifested world. These appear to result in disharmony, or to use the musical metaphor, discord. Love is the law that underlies all creation and thus is the great unifier. Remember the definition of the cosmic given by Imperator Claudio Musuto. Love is the driving force that brought all into existence. Consider these great universal opposites, light and dark, birth and death, or seeming death, which we call transition, meaning change, particularly in form and energy in the Rosicrucian teachings, male and female, action and passivity, summer and winter, the sublime and the terrible. There are great forces in nature. Some are gravitational, some are electrical, some are chemical. This is another beautiful Hubble image of colliding galaxies. And the text that went with this image was literally colliding galaxies make love, not war, because they birth new star clusters. Love is the great force of transmutation. We must remember that we can transmute pain and sorrow into healing and wholeness, violence into mercy and peace. It is our responsibility as mystics to transmute anger, pain, and suffering into healing. We can do that only if we work on ourselves first, transmuting our lower nature, as Michael Shaluli discussed, changing our desires, transmuting them into the higher desires. Love and gratitude are also the emotional drivers that energize our thought forms as we release them into the cosmic mind. Now, let us turn to a favorite personality of the past. I know it's a favorite person, he's a favorite of our Grand Master, Julie Scott. This is Robert Fludd. He was born in the 16th century and passed through transition in the 17th century. He's really nearing the end as we get into the height and the end of the Renaissance. He was a scientist, a philosopher, a mystic, a physician, and a Rosicrucian apologist, which means he defended the Rosicrucian motivation, if I could call it that. And in the quote by William Huffman, he was the foremost Renaissance Christian Neoplatonist alchemist of his time. In his lifetime, the Rosicrucians announced themselves to the world, starting in Germany with the Fama Fraternitatis. Robert Fludd's writings of the microcosm and macrocosm explained how the universe and humankind functioned according to overarching harmonies related to Kabbalah, music, the Bible, and the Neoplatonic Hermetic tradition that began with Ficino in Florence, Italy, reaching its greatest height with Robert Fludd. He lived by the dictum that you never admit you are a rose croix, meaning rose cross in Latin, since doing so is self-proclaiming as one who has reached the rose-quartz state of perfect enlightenment. We saw Michael Shaluli's presentation close with Robert Fludd's rose. It was the symbol of the World Convention in August 2019 in Rome. It is also the title page of Robert Fludd's Summum Bonum, which was published in 1629, in Latin meaning the highest or greatest good. If you look at the rose, 7 petals surrounding 7 petals surrounding 7 petals 7 times, this mandala of the rose speaks of the cosmic or celestial ascent. Now, the actual Latin is a longer phrase. Ex rosa apis mel, dat rosa mel apibus, mel amoris mel Dei. Out of the rose, honeybees. The rose gives honey to the bees, honey of love, honey of the divine. The rose represents the divine source or cosmic intelligence out of which nature is formed. Roses, as we know, don't provide honey. It's the bees that do that. Roses provide nectar. The bees will transform the nectar or wisdom of the primordial tradition as they work in the world. The honey of love that comes from divine mind. Now at this point, because what you had been looking at is a version of the rose cross. I don't know if you noticed the stem with the thorns, but that's the cross part. I want to talk to you a little bit about this very important primordial symbol of the AMORC. Together, the intersection or conjunction of nous, or cosmic essence as we call it, or as some others say, divine mind, is represented by the vertical line, and spirit energy, electrons, or the quantum universe of matter, that is represented by the horizontal line. This intersection of the two create life. The rose blooms when these seeming opposites unite and are balanced or are in harmony. The rose is the point of manifestation. It also signifies the developing soul personality on the earth plane with its direct access to divine wisdom. I don't know if you've thought about that, but the Christian cross, and I know this might look like the Christian cross, that's a religious primordial symbol as well. The Romans crucified the Christians in Roman times on a T, not on a cross. So whenever you see the Christian cross, do think of it as a primordial symbol. God in nature, divine wisdom in nature, and we have direct access. That's the difference between mysticism and religion. That mysticism teaches that we have direct access within. Even Jesus of Nazareth said, the kingdom of God is within you. The meaning of the rose cross is primordial. It is archetypal, which means it is ancient and common across cultures, recognized across cultures through the collective unconscious. Now, this brings us to another important point that we've been talking about. And just last week, we listened in one of the Grand Master's teleconferences to an article, Practical Mysticism, written by Ralph M. Lewis. And at the very end of the article, he talks about pantheists and pantheism. He says that all Rosicrucians as mystics are essentially pantheists. That is, they understand that the essence of the cosmic intelligence exists in all things, particularly in nature. And I'm going to show you a quote now. It is the Rosicrucian Plea for Spiritual Ecology, printed in the last Rosicrucian Digest. All of nature's kingdoms are mutually dependent, and there is neither space nor frontier between them. And each of them, on different levels and in different forms, is endowed with consciousness. This consciousness is perceived at its highest level of vibration as universal love, the essence of creation. So let's go back to Robert Fludd for a moment. In Latin at the top is written Integra Naturae. And our Grand Master was talking about the mirror. She used the music Spiegel im Spiegel, which mirror in mirror. Here, Robert Fludd is telling us the image of nature also mirrors the image of art. He is using his drawings to elucidate in art information or knowledge about nature. This image comes from his cosmic history of the two worlds. And here he depicts nature as feminine. You see the woman, and her left arm is connected to the ape, and her right arm to divine mind, the cloud with the Yohe Bauhe above her. We also notice that the world's soul, or nature, has her right foot on land and her left foot on the oceans. Her head is surrounded by a nimbus of stars. These reach into the celestial realms of angelic beings, and that is a reference to Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagites, Neoplatonic 6th century 9 ascending realms of angels. That's not really important, but those of you who like to know these things, I left that in there. And you see that actually 3 times 3, all 9 realms are captured there. They are on fire, and it's a celestial fire, because especially the highest realm of seraphim face God, and they are perpetually burning because they are facing the ineffable. And you'll see little cherubs in that very outer ring alternating with the seraphim. So actually all 9 realms of angels are captured there above the celestial sphere. If you look at the center, at the earth, extending outwards from the center, you see the 4 elements. You see aqua e terrae, water and earth. You also see a mem on the left side near the sun, because the sun is considered to be masculine. That's also archetypal. On the left side, a woman, and she's associated with the moon and feminine energies. From the earth, radiating downward, you see various realms, minerals, vegetables, animals. You see fire and air. You see the moon, Mercury, Venus, and the sun, because Fludd ascribed to the Copernican theory and not to the Ptolemaic theory of the universe. The sphere of Mars, after Earth. So we have the inferior planets, then the sun, and then the superior planets, those who are away from the sun, after Earth. So we have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So I know my internet here just suddenly probably cut out, but don't worry, you could probably just contemplate the image. So here is Robert Fludd's title page of the history of the two worlds, illustrating the macrocosm and microcosm. And the one mirrors the other. And you will see here also, this image is reminiscent for many of you of Michelangelo's Vitruvian Man. Fludd's History of the Two Worlds was an amazing compendium spanning metaphysics, physics, art, and technology, or artifice. Techne, our word technology, comes from the Greek, refers to both art and making or crafting things out of knowledge, because it's also associated with knowledge, divine knowledge. Recall that Fludd was an alchemist and a Neoplatonist. And what does Neoplatonism mean? It means new knowledge based on Plato's writings. There were philosophers who followed him. The most prominent was Plotinus, and his concept of the one, or omneity in all things. Fludd also drew this image about the music of the spheres. It is his illustration of the celestial monochord. What is a monochord? Mono meaning one, was an ancient instrument with only one string. You're wondering, wow, how does that work? So Pythagoras was said to have invented the monochord, but we now know that monochords were referenced in Sumerian writings much, much earlier. They were the source of experiments, particularly with vibration. Fludd, remember, studied mathematics and alchemy. He had his own working laboratory where he did alchemical experiments. And here in this image, if you look at it closely, he weds mysticism, science, astronomy, which really literally means to name celestial objects with the sun at its center, as well as art. It is, after all, a drawing. We have God's hand, again, turning the celestial monochord. Something else, please do notice, if you look at the very base of the string, you see earth, then you see aqua, water, then air, then fire, but you also see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, repeating itself. So the monochord illustrates the concept of divine unity in all that exists in mathematical and musical vibratory proportion. Those of you who study music will recognize the octave. Actually, it's 7 notes that repeat. The ascending octaves or notes also are in the connecting spheres. You see how the spheres connect. So we have this concept of divine harmony in creation. Dr. Fludd also had a dream which involved music. And he made this drawing, and you see the A, B, C, D, E repeated. It's quite minute here. I also have a screen share with sound, but I'm not going to share this with you right now. When these slides are posted, the screen share should work, and you will be able to hear his kind of mathematical rendition of music. It's about almost 2 minutes long, but even just hearing a few seconds of it would make you understand that music and mathematics are quite precise. So Fludd envisioned a temple of music based on Pythagorean principles. This manuscript was discovered at Yale University, and it was music composed by him. Okay, so we'll just go to the next slide because you get the idea. Yeah, we're a little behind time, so I don't, brothers and sorors, you want to go out and experience the summer solstice. So in just a moment, we'll just keep going here. You will recognize the title page of a very important document in our tradition. It is the Alchemical Wedding. What is the Alchemical Wedding? It is the soul personality's search for divine union. What's very odd about this manuscript is that here it is in German, of course, because it was published first in German, the Chemische Hochzeit of Christian Rosenkreuz. All of this is symbolic, and it shows the year 1459, when really it was published in 1616. In numerology, those of you who study that know that we can reduce numbers, especially large numbers, by adding together each numeral. This number reduces to the oneness of being. So add 1 to 4 to 5 to 9, and that's 19. Add 1 to 9, and that's 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. This is also the tetractys of Pythagoras. 1, 2, 3, 4 also resolve this way into 10, or 1 plus 0, which is. On the 400th anniversary of the Chemical Wedding, our order published a new manifesto called The New Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. Many of you, and you have access to this document, especially if you're a neophyte or new person in the order, and even for those of you who are listening in but aren't necessarily students of the order, but maybe hopefully after today or listening to our presentations, you might decide to join us. So in this symbolic spiritual journey, we accompany a narrator in his dream of an ascent through the various celestial spheres. It's quite a cryptic document, but maybe not quite as cryptic as the original. So the narrator's guide in the celestial ascent is the phoenix, a symbol of rebirth and regeneration in this new chemical wedding. And on pages 14 to 15 in this new manifesto, the narrator refers to this cosmic chant while also hearing the most beautiful music beyond the seventh heaven and the music of the spheres so beloved by Pythagoras, wisest of all sages, the ut quaint laxus. Now I have a surprise for some of you, and I want to thank Karen Bashir for this. So I'm going to play this little piece here for you.
Und queant laxis, resonari fibris, mira gestorum, famili tuorum, solve polluti, labii reatum, sancta Ioannis. Famili tuorum, or ut queant famili tuorum, so that your servants may, laxis fibris, with loosened voices, resonare, resound, mira gestorum, the wonders of your deeds, labii reatum, dissolve the guilt of our polluted lips, Sancta Ioannis, St. John.
So many of you who knew him would recognize the voice of our beloved Frater Stephen Armstrong, who passed through transition last summer, just before the Rome Convention. And this was a sudden transition and quite a shock to all of us. And now, Fraters and Sorors, I want you to look at the kind of metaphysical meaning of these lines. So ut, or do, the whole series or octave of musical notes. Re, facilitating change in us through resonance. Me, the miracles or wonders of transformation. Gestorum, gestation. Fa, we are of your family. Famuli tuorum, that is the literal translation in Latin. Solve, dissolve what is polluted. Those words are almost identical. Rectify our lips, our words, in other words. And the reference to St. John, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the light. This is chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of John. Now I hear someone else's microphone here, so I'm not sure what's happening, but not to worry. See if our host can work on that. So here we have the cosmic keyboard, and we have the ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, ut, called the solfeggio scale. They are the Latin sounds, and they were used as a mnemonic, a memory aid, after the goddess of memory in Greece, Mnemosyne, for those who sung Gregorian chant in the 8th century, in the Common Era. You see also here the hertz, the frequencies, that is vibrations per second associated with each of these sounds. There is a standard tuning that we use now at 440 hertz. This is the Stuttgart hertz frequency, so that when orchestras play, they're all in tune, and instruments can tune to that particular vibration. The vibrations actually are somewhat within these ranges, and they have varied over time. There was a French scale, etc., and I'll leave you to looking up the history of that. The octaves of vibration, or 7-note musical scale, is based on the frequencies of vibration found in the natural world. Our order teaches us to use sound vibrations for healing, not only ourselves, but also the earth. Om or Aum on D natural is the frequency of universal or cosmic love. We can also affect healing on the level of our DNA through deep meditation and the use of vowel sounds. The Grand Master has done some really excellent work using vowel sounds and talking about her own experiences with healing broken bone at the very level of the DNA using vowel sounds. Now, the flipped plant laxis is in reference also to the musical scale. And just so we're clear, because I know there's some confusion, especially for people who don't know music, and they say, well, the Frotter's in tone on D below middle C and the sorors on the D above middle C. But honestly, every C on the musical keyboard is every other C at a corresponding frequency. This is the law of correspondence. And we see the octave here, and some of you are familiar with the keyboard. Again, something I invite you to study. Pitch is the term musicians use to name the frequency at which any given note vibrates. So when we say that aum or om is on D, we're talking about its pitch. We measure pitch in hertz, or cycles per second. That's a scientific measurement. How many cycles does something vibrate? And many of you from early math school know about sine waves. So again, something you can investigate. Harmony refers to the vertical aspect of music. Several different pitches sounded at once and can be consonant, that is pleasant, or dissonant, unpleasant, usually 2 or 3 notes forming a chord. Many of you will remember, if you've been in the order as long as I have, Dr. Albert Tollifer. That's how he liked his name to be pronounced. He made his transition in 1993. He was a beloved Rosicrucian of 55 years and a music educator. He called harmony the love aspect of music. And he often had us intone vowel sounds, especially the aum, in harmony, in thirds. Melody is the horizontal movement of notes or pitches across time. So when you hum a tune or a melody, that's the movement of notes or pitches across time. Now, frauders and sorors, very quickly here, look at your right first at ancient harmonics. Those are the outer numbers. The harmonics are tones that correspond with a fundamental tone. So they vibrate in harmony with a fundamental tone. We also have, there's a lot of now research on sacred tones with the fundamental tone at 8 hertz. Those are the inner numbers, but you see the 440 there as well, which we tune using a tuning fork or a tuning pitch, most musical instruments nowadays. On the left, you will see the keyboard again, and something quite remarkable. You will see what we call the golden ratio or Fibonacci sequence, and this is the C major chord. The first note C, the third note E, the fifth note G, and then again C repeated. And anyone can learn music because we can all see repeating patterns. How does the Fibonacci sequence work? Well, you add the next number to the number before it. So it's simply this. Add 0 to 1 and you get 1. So 1 is repeated in the Fibonacci sequence. Add 1 to 1 and you have 2. Add 2 to 1 and you have 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. Add 21 to 13, the number before it, and you get 34. 34 and 21, 55, and so on. In a way, 144 is the cycle of reincarnation that we speak to in our order, a Fibonacci number. Okay, now watch this. The law of correspondence in nature. If you look at the center there of the slide, you see the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence and how they become a spiral. See how this law of correspondence works in nature. The embryo, the tendrils of a vine, which actually form the musical treble clef in this image. Hurricanes, great forces of nature. Some of you will recognize the state of Florida, perhaps where you're calling in from. Also, spiral galaxies, plants, and of course, the unfolding rose. If you want to learn more about morphic resonance, I invite you to look at the books written by Rupert Sheldrake. Earlier on in the studies, those of us who have been in the order since the 1970s and 80s will remember that we received this piece of paper that came with our monographs. It's called the Cosmic Keyboard. It shows us that all is vibration and that all energy moves in octaves of vibration. We get the lowest vibration from 2 hertz on into gamma and cosmic rays. You don't need to crane your neck sideways to look at that because you can see touch, sound, electromagnetic waves, from radio to microwaves, heat, visible light, which is broken down at the top, ultraviolet X-ray, and gamma and cosmic rays. And this can also be found almost anywhere on the internet if you Google it. Now I'm going to show you the other side because I couldn't find the other side. Our teachings, and we often talk about our order as a kind of, well, we used to talk about it as a secret society. It isn't secret anymore, but we do try to protect our teachings. And we sign an oath that we do that. We don't sell them. We don't sell our monographs. They don't belong to us. They belong to the Grand Lodge. And they belong to all of us. And we share them through our example and through the work that we do as Rosicrucian mystics. Here's the other side of the cosmic keyboard. You see the piano scale, but you see correspondences in rates of vibration in hertz, in color, in sound with vowel intonations, as well as the elements, chemical elements. In other words, the all is in the all. And now you don't see it because it's part of the teachings. So it'll be up to the Grand Master. She can edit that out if she wants to. Now, here also, we see the visible light spectrum. And if you look over to the left, you see the frequency, the hertz, in terahertz. You also see wavelengths, and you see photon energy. You see wavelengths in nanometers. By the way, the virus, COVID-19, measures in nanometers, and it's transmitted through breathing. So that's why masks are important, brothers and sorors, if I may say so, when you're going out and about. And it isn't that you're protected, but you are protecting your fellow humanity. So here we see the colors associated with certain wavelengths. And if we look through the spectrum, we see that 440, if we go kind of toward the right, is associated with red. Also with raw and ma, because that's on the note A. If we go higher in frequency in terahertz to 750, we're in the violet range. And some have said that this is the sound of the earth. Now let's talk about today. And again, I'm getting toward the end, so no worries. And I know it's been hard on everyone, but you'll be able to get up and move around for a brief break before the Grand Master closes. Today is a very special astronomical event in the Earth's calendar. It is the summer solstice. It is the beginning of summer in the northern hemisphere and also in places like the Americas, Europe, and Asia, including Japan. Traditionally also in England and Europe, this day marks midsummer, not the beginning of summer, but the middle of summer, because the days are going to get shorter after today. In the southern hemisphere, especially in Australia, New Zealand, the further south you go, southern regions of the African continent, and South America, it is the winter solstice, the opposite, the shortest day and the longest night, considered the beginning of winter. It is also classically called the birth of light. Hence, great avatars are often associated with being born on the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. Because of the tilt of the earth in the north, where I am living, we experience the longest day of the year and the shortest night. The opposite is true south of the equator. Again, further south you go, like South Africa and Australia. And here's the Earth with the moon revolving around it. The Earth's tilt relative to the sun is 23.44 degrees. This tilt and the elliptical orbit of the Earth creates our seasons, including the fluctuation of when the solstice occurs from year to year. We do not travel in perfect circles. It was thought in the past that the orbits of the planets were perfect, but that is not so. Now, let's talk about the summer solstice as a celebration. Worldwide, the summer solstice is celebrated by traditional cultures whose roots extend to ancient times. So in ancient Egypt, you had the cyclical inundation of the Nile from June to June, high and low, the beginning of the Nile's inundation to its lowest point. This water was thought to be the tears of Isis for her dead husband Osiris. Also, the Great Pyramid, where it's located geographically on the planet, is a marker of the sun's power as it shines directly overhead. The African New Year celebration for the fertility of the earth and the rising of Sirius is also the brightest star in the northern hemisphere in the winter sky. This marks the cycle of the great year. Very close to the solstice is the feast day of John the Baptist, and we talked about the Ut Quant Laxus. Yesterday was the American Emancipation Day, Friday, June 19th, also called Juneteenth. The beginning of freedom, certainly not yet accomplished, but the beginnings, the hope for the future. It is the beginning of Beltane, or summer, with the sun reaching the Tropic of Cancer here in the north, and special celebrations that include fires, flowers, and festivals. Now, my question is to you, what do Stonehenge and Wall Street have in common? Well, Stonehenge is astronomically correct with the solstice, but Wall Street is not correct. Its east-west grid does show the sunset, but it's a coincidental alignment, and that happens 4 times a year, and it does not align with the solstices or the equinoxes, and you can look up those dates and times on the internet if you're interested. But it isn't a kind of Stonehenge. So let's talk about balance in the equinoxes as we get towards the end here. Let us consider the spring equinox. It is the day of equal light and dark. In the north, occurring around March 19th to the 22nd, which we also celebrate as the Rosicrucian New Year. And that is also archetypal with early civilizations. Spring was the beginning. The concept of balancing cosmic forces is associated with both the spring or vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox. These are times of equal hours of light and dark. The idea of the Earth being in balance relative to the sun's gravity supposes that one can stand a raw egg virtually on its fat end. And I know with practice, some of you might be able to do this. Here's a picture from March 19th, which is the spring equinox or the vernal equinox from 2018, where I stood a raw egg on its fat end on the counter in my kitchen. And my kitchen isn't even that level, so that was pretty amazing. And I invite you to try that on the day of the spring and autumn equinox. At the summer solstice, all life responds to the longest days of the year. And it's said that there's a 3-day interval where the sun appears to stand still. All of nature responds to these natural annual cycles. And I want to bring this home, especially to nature, because we have female snapping turtles where I live, and they lay their eggs on or near the summer solstice in June around the lakes and rivers in North America. So sometimes where I live, on the very day of the summer solstice, they have an internal clock which is attuned to the larger forces of our solar system, and they just know when to come out of the river and lay their eggs. So this photo is a female snapper depositing her eggs in the early morning. This same turtle comes back to our garden every year in June. So we moved here to this place. It's mostly a giant anthill. It's all sand, and it was taken in 2014. Now quickly, I'll show you a few others. Here on the left is the same turtle the next year on June 10th, 2015. She's a little bit early. And then a very similar turtle, maybe the same turtle, not quite sure, from June 16th, 2018. So we have turtles coming a little bit early, and that depends maybe a little bit more on climate change and global warming. On June 14th, 2018, we are nearing the summer solstice. I want to show you this very short video of a turtle leaving after she's laid her eggs. So what's remarkable about that video is that actually in the foreground, you see a wild grapevine with its tendrils gripping what looks like perhaps a sumac. And it's kind of a parasitic species, but it's not gripping itself. It's looking for a foothold on other plants. And this is the beauty of nature that was referred to both by Julian Johnson and our beloved Michael Shilluli and our Grandmaster, that we can attune with nature, the sounds of nature. And I believe that was a cardinal that you heard, that chipping sound in the background. You saw the leaves moving, you see the turtle making its slow progress down an embankment toward water. This was yesterday, where two turtles, these are very large, almost a foot across in terms of their shell with long tails, and she was also leaving our garden. So you heard a red-winged blackbird in the background there, and I just want to say how important it is for us to also take charge a little bit about some of the harm that we have done to nature. And this is a remarkable opportunity for us as we reduced our carbon dioxide emissions into the air during this period of kind of a social shutdown worldwide. The atmosphere is cleaning itself. So we're on the eve of the summer solstice this year, and the snappers have come back to the garden. Also, I want you to remember that there are invasive species. The bird that you heard here, the red-winged blackbird, is threatened because cattails are being replaced by phragmites, or phragmites as they're called. These are imported species that have no business taking over our beautiful marshes. And it's very important to aid campaigns that try to return us to the biodiversity that we have and that we need to protect. This is the same snapper, and I'll just show this again to you briefly. Here she is laying her nest. You see her head covered with dirt and her long tail, and I'm very close to her. I'm trying to hide from her, but I think she's aware that I'm there. So she's not moving very much. I think she's burying her eggs at this point. It took her 4 hours to lay her eggs and decide on a nest. It's only a few seconds long. And what happens to those eggs if they aren't eaten by skunks and other creatures like raccoons that dig them up, because who doesn't like fresh eggs? If the hatchlings survive, this one on the left was born on the day of the autumnal equinox in 2016. He was in our driveway going in the wrong direction, but strengthening his legs, and so he was removed and headed, placed closer to the water. You see the size of these. That's a new hatchling on the left, September 15th, again because in 2018 the eggs were laid about a week or so earlier than usual. Frauders and sorors. I would invite you to do a harmonizing meditation, but I know that Esme is going to do one with you very shortly, and the focus will be on peace. I would also invite you to please look at Liber 777 that is published by our order and hold the earth in your thoughts, because truly, humankind, in a very short period of time, has deeply impacted nature. You see here how the African continent and the Arabian continent, they're so dry, and that actually the forest is retreating. You see Europe here lit up and in light. You also see snow and cloud formations and how beautiful our planet is. Please hold her in your thoughts and send your healing thoughts while you intone Om to our planet and its aura. And remember, brothers and sorors, we do not have any rights over our planet, simply the obligation to respect, preserve, and protect it, in a word, to love it. Let us remember this and remind our children of it. So mote it be. So, frauders and sorors, I bid you farewell, and thank you so much